Hello, everyone. It's December 17th, 2013. It's Tuesday. It's Harp Tuesday. And for this episode, what I thought I would do is talk a little bit about accompanying and improvising. Now, I'm not necessarily the best person to talk about these things because I'm very much in the classical genre. I love classical music. That's basically all that I play. And in classical music, very typically, everything is written out. And you always play something the same way so that you're not necessarily exercising your skills at, say, improvising and making things up on the fly. And those are things that get better, just like anything, the more you do them and the more you practice. But I do think I can maybe offer some suggestions, and I'm going to be using Auld Lang Syne as an example, and I'm just playing. I have a lead sheet or a fake sheet where I have the tune and I have the chords. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about improvising and also a little bit about accompanying and how to sort of make up an accompaniment from a lead sheet where you don't have left hand, you just have the tune and the chords. And so, of course, one of the important things about both of those is a reasonable knowledge of chord and chord structures. And I did an episode on chords, but basically that idea of, so for example, if we see an E flat, my version of this piece at least is in E flat, and the beautiful thing about chords on the harp is that it's always the same feel, the same hand position, the same shape. In other words, if we see an E flat chord, boom, we just start, if we were going to place four fingers, the root position, the fourth finger is always on the E, and we build up G, B, E. Or if, it's a C chord, we're starting on the C, or an A chord, we're starting on the A. We always have that sort of sense. We don't have to change anything. It's just the pedals or the levers that might have to change to get us the appropriate, major or minor, or whatever we want. But when we're dealing with those basic chords, so no sevenths, just majors or minors, it's these shapes just are so neat and tidy. And then we also, of course, have to know that, okay, here's an E flat, but this is also an E flat, this first inversion where, we have always the same notes, but this E is moved from the bottom. Where are we gone here? Instead of an E in the bottom, right, we're moving up, and this note is the same, this is the same, this is the same, and then we got this G on the top. Or if we're just doing three notes, it's a little perhaps more obvious because that E goes whoop, up to here, right? We're playing instead of that lower E, we're playing this one, or if we move up to the next inversion, second inversion, G moves up here. But I don't know that you necessarily need to be thinking about in the language of inversions as you're playing. What's important is that you, for example, can see and recognize that, this, if I see these three notes, even though we're starting on a B on the bottom, this B, A, G, that's part of an E chord. So I don't need to be thinking, this is second inversion E chord, though it's useful to have those tools to describe it, but what's most important is to recognize that this is an E chord, part of an E chord. Or if I want to play an E chord, knowing that I have all these various options, these sort of three shapes, if I'm playing four notes like that. So that basic understanding of chord structures is very, very important. So let's look at then some sort of typical accompaniment figures one can do in the left hand. And something that generally sounds really good on the harp is just sort of an arpeggiated chord with 4, 2, and 1. So it generally sounds better if we have an E chord, right? Let's say we have an E chord, and let's say we want to have the E on the bottom. It generally sounds better to do E, B, E, rather than say E, G, B, or. Now we're missing the G in this chord. We're not actually hearing that G, but that spacing, especially as we get lower and lower, just is generally more pleasing to the ear than having them be all close together. And of course, this can sound really nice too. But just being aware that that 4-2-1 pattern, and typically it's easiest if we're just doing a root position. If we're doing an A chord, we're starting on the A. If we're doing an F chord, we're starting on the F. If we're doing a G chord, we're starting on the G. But that's a really handy sort of go-to position where we have a sixth between 4 and 2, and we got the fourth between 2 and 1. And we're just... So for example, with this... that sounds nice, and all I'm doing in the left hand is just, we got an E chord for the first bar, so we've gone to B, back to E, and here we have that right hand note has a dotted half note, so to go actually doesn't sound so great. We're missing, that third, the fourth, eighth note in the first half of the bar. We really want to hear a continuation. If we hear this, we want to keep hearing eighth notes. What do we got here? Going from the bar before. So, we could drop the right hand down and just continue up on that A chord. Conveniently, it works out that here we are on this last note. And again, maybe the right hand takes some of those. Or we could, for example, do... just experimenting with something different. We could obviously do maybe some chords, but just this little pattern is a very nice pattern. Sometimes, of course, maybe we're in 3 and we could do 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Just keep it going. Maybe sometimes we're doing 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2. So there we're doing, and again, in general, it's often a nicer sound to skip this first third. Here A, skip the C, go straight to the E, and if we want to add the C, we'll add it up on the top. And then 2 and 3 and 1. So again, that's a 3-4 rhythm, or of course it could be a 6-8. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Sometimes we may want to just go for that nice root position and have that third in there. So that some sort of arpeggiated left hand then is often has a nice sound and is a good option. Of course, we can also do some rolled chords. So those two options, some chords, some arpeggios, are two just kind of basic, simple things where you're not trying to do anything too fancy that maybe requires planning ahead and writing it down, and lets you get a pretty good sound. And let's move to the idea of improvisation. So with improvisation, you're looking at adding some notes in, perhaps, that sound good, right? That work out. And again, we're kind of looking at the harmonic structure, the chord structure. So this first bar is in E flat. So, of course, all the notes in the E chord are going to sound good. And there's that idea of a passing tone that, for example, we might have an F in there, but really it's just leading us into an E or a G, probably, and that it's not part of the overall harmonic structure of that particular bar. So we're focused on these three notes, but we can have some other notes outside of that E chord in there, but just trying to still come back to that idea of we have this E chord or this B chord or this or whatever. So you could play around, maybe with both hands, maybe just with the right hand, just trying to see, hey, does this note sound good? And again, it's that idea of practice. The more you do it, the more comfortable you're going to be with that idea of just improvising on something. So there we have, okay, there's that basic. I'm just kind of playing around with some notes and hoping that they sound good and trying to be aware of that chord structure. And of course you can analyze it, right? Like you can try to sit down and try a note. Does this sound good? Does this sound good? That sounds okay. We could add that D in there. Even that C sounds okay. How about, hey, that F sounds okay. Maybe not that G, because we're going to hear we might hear it again at the end of that bar. Maybe not that is. So just, you can slowly analyze things and try to get a sense, does this sound good? Does this not sound good? But it's also fun to just kind of try to just play it and again be listening for what sounds good and what doesn't, and some things may be more obvious or may be called to you more than others, but and then the final thing, of course, is to perhaps go away from the tune completely. So what I did at that time, I was aware of the tune. I was trying to come back to the tune at various times as well as going away from it. But you can also just try to improvise in that harmonic structure. So this first bar is in E flat, so we're just going to try to have something that sounds like E flat, but it's not necessarily connected to the tune. And the next bar, something that is in B flat, but not necessarily connected to the tune. And that, of course, will then go along with, if there's somebody else playing the tune, that will fit together, so that and maybe that helps to have, if you got a left hand in there as well, providing that structure so that mess the rhythm up there at some point, but that doesn't really sound like Old Lang Syne for the most part, but it would actually fit together, as I say, with somebody playing the tune, because I'm just sticking in the harmonic structure. So hopefully that's given you a few ideas of maybe something to do. And as I say, it's fun to take a piece where you have the chords and you have the tune, and just see. And just play around with it, and you're only going to get better the more that you do, in terms of coming up with accompaniment patterns on the fly and coming up with improvisations on the fly. So yeah, so hopefully that was useful, and have a wonderful holiday, and I will see you in a couple weeks. Cheers.